We have been putting this together for you for quite some time. This one is not easy. You're either going to be angry as you watch it, or you might even be sympathetic. Very few are going to be somewhere in the middle. We have found out about registered sex offenders who are not allowed to live among regular people. They're sex offenders, so they're not allowed to live in a regular neighborhood. So they've taken to live in the woods. In fact, they've actually formed a community among themselves living in the woods. They've lived in tents. And they told the officials, who eventually kicked them out of there, by the way, that it was the only place that they could exist under Georgia law. This amazing story is told today from the inside out, though, by our own Brooke Baldwin.
For months, a group of registered sex offenders had been living together in the woods in Georgia. The reason? They were homeless. They say forced there as a result of the state's strict sex offender law. Passed in 2006, Georgia's 16,000 sex offenders cannot live or work within 1,000 feet of a child care facility, church, school, or area where minors congregate. So you and essentially 8 other men, 8 other sex offenders are living in tents in the woods in Cobb County because it's difficult to find a compliant shelter.
Yes, ma'am, because the thing about it is with shelters, there's, they kind of sort of,
there are kids.
With family and children there, it's, we can't stay there.
Last October, Mark agreed to plead guilty to child molestation. He says he didn't touch the child, but agreed to the plea in exchange for 5 years probation. In Cobb County, where he's serving out his probation, finding a shelter that's affordable and in compliance with the law, Mark says is next to impossible.
So there's like a church or school like down every block.
Republican state legislator David Ralston, a co-sponsor of the original bill, is a hardliner when it comes to sex offenders.
We didn't design this law with comfort and convenience in mind. We designed it with safety in mind.
There are people who will watch the story and they'll hear about you and the fact that you're a registered sex offender, and they say, I have no sympathy.
I can understand formulating an opinion if you look at the surface, but in this matter, you have to look beyond the surface and actually see the person for who they are.
In more than 20 states, there are residency restriction laws which regulate where sex offenders may live. Forensic psychologist Kevin Baldwin says there is no proof yet that laws that force sex offenders to live together away from everyone else leads to more crime, but it does create instability.
What you've actually created is a nomadic group of destabilized offenders, and I don't think anyone can argue that that's good for public policy or safety.
Mark is no longer living in the woods. 2 weeks ago, the sheriff told the group to go. Some found temporary shelter in a neighboring county. For now, this 30-year-old says he feels stuck. Mark's priority should be getting his life back on track. Instead,
like
his focus, finding a bed at night.
The state can tell you where you can't live, but they can't tell you where you can.
That is his frustration. For the last 2 weeks, Mark has been living in a shelter in a nearby county. He basically lives week to week, barely scraping together the $60 a week to stay there. He gets that from his mother and grandmother.